Hello, welcome to the Cunning Plan podcast. Thanks for coming back. Last time we were here, we talked a lot about Joe's takeaways from the big social media conference that we were visiting last week. We covered off a lot of things about the future of social media, advertising, the way people are handling data, types of bots, and there was all sorts of stuff. We covered it. If you didn't listen to it, if you didn't watch it, then go and check it out. We'll put a link in the description. But today we're here to talk about part 2 from our discussion, and we're going to be covering off augmented reality, virtual reality, and live streaming. And there's a huge amount to go at here as well, isn't there? So first up, let's talk a little about AR and VR.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you mention things like Google Glass, and suddenly people go, "Oh yeah, Google Glass." Yeah. It quickly seems to VR has made a couple of attempts to come in, and it quickly gets killed off. And the guy who was speaking was from a cool company called Draw and Code, and he was just he opened the conversation by saying, "You are not going to use this year, and probably not next year." But he said that companies are becoming more and more understanding of how it can be used. Big brands that can afford it, because it's very expensive technology, are using it to experiment with. My favourite example he used, I never really picked up on this, but Zara don't do advertising. I had never thought about it, but he says they very, very rarely do any kind of advertising. They are built on the whole, this is us. We don't need to advertise. You know what we're about. Yeah. And we don't need to advertise it, but they did do an AR campaign where you could sort of scan what someone, if you found someone in the street who it sounds a bit creepy I suppose, but if you saw someone in the street who you thought dressed quite well, yeah, you could take a picture. Okay. And then, I know, it's getting a bit weird, but Zara
shouldn't do that. If you see someone in the street that you think looks good, ask the permission first before you take a picture of them, kids. It's not okay just to keep taking photos of people in the street. That gets you arrested.
Exactly.
Thank you, Zara.
But, exactly, Zara encouraging that. But you take the picture and then Zara would find the clothes that would match that fashion type. Right. And you could do that using their app, using the AR they'd built on that app. And it was a really clever way. He did say it was a little bit clunky because the technology is still new, and but he said that's what brands are doing. They're trying it. They're sort of understanding its potential use. And for clothing brands, that ability to, on Instagram, take a screenshot of an influencer that you think has got great look, a suit or whatever it is, and you can quickly put that onto an app, and that app can find that sort of clothing for you, but obviously maybe for a bit cheaper or from a different brand that you prefer. It's fascinating to me because I think that's using AR in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. So he was talking about how brands will slowly, especially clothing brands, will start to use it that way. He was talking about how people think Pokemon Go sort of had its peak, but as an AR platform, that is still very much, I think he compared it to Steam, which is the very popular sort of PC I don't know how you describe Steam. It's sort of an all.
It's a platform, isn't it? Yeah, it's basically a store, but it's a
Exactly. So basically, every PC user uses Steam in order to use the games that they're using, and they have 67 monthly users. Pokemon Go has 65.
67 monthly users or 67 million monthly?
Sorry, 67 million monthly users.
Wow. And how many is Pokemon Go?
65 million. So he was saying, as much as you think Pokemon's been and gone, it actually still has a huge fan base of people who are using AR on a day-to-day basis.
And they've massively iterated it. I mean, they haven't just put that out there and left it. It was, what was it, 3 years ago that it came out and started. Yeah. And they've been growing that and developing it over time.
Exactly. So he was saying how it's already out there. You're already using it. You would have used it at some point, inevitably, whether it's through a potential thing like the Zara advert or whether it's using Pokemon Go. It's been used in so many little aspects of life that you don't quite realise it's there.
Google Translate, there's a great,
exactly,
hold the camera up to something in a different language and you can see that sign rewritten.
Exactly. There's some really clever stuff out there, and of course for many people, I suppose of a certain age group especially, Snapchat use it every day. You can manipulate whatever you want from your picture using AR. So it's all there. I think people aren't quite aware that it is augmented reality, AR, just to be clear, that they're using. And I think he's saying it's now becoming more and more popular, and as it reaches a more public domain, brands will inevitably start to work out how they can use it for their own advantage. Obviously with Snapchat, you see live events will be sponsored by certain brands. Gatorade had a really, really famous one over the Super Bowl. It's a famous thing in the NFL when the winning coach wins the game, he gets the sort of big bucket of Gatorade poured over him. It's sticky. It's very, I don't really understand where it came from, but it's full of ice as well, so and it's played in January, so it's not really ideal, but Snapchat users during the Super Bowl could do it to themselves.
Right.
So you do Snapchat and Gatorade, and it was really popular, and it was run by Gatorade. So brands are already getting out there with this idea of AR. It's the idea of VR that is the slightly less sort of popular mechanism. But
so just to be clear, for anyone that doesn't understand, augmented reality is about adding something to the world around us. So you hold a camera up or a phone or whatever else, and you will see something slightly different on the handset. So it'll add something, something on screen here. There could be something sitting right here beside me right now.
One day,
for example.
One day.
Whereas virtual reality is very much more an individual thing. It's I guess augmented reality is bringing something fantastical into our world, whereas virtual reality is about us going to another world.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was saying that VR is still very much in its early stages. He didn't want to make any predictions with VR because he said it's we've seen it before with Google Glass, with the televisions about 10 years ago that were all heralding the fact they could use virtual reality, but no one embraced it. So he's more keen to say that augmented reality is really where a lot of brands are starting to focus in on. He said there'll be, I think it was 2 billion users in the next 5 years. So
it's Apple are putting a lot of effort into their their solution as well, aren't they? So I think that's what it comes down to. Is when a big company gets behind it and says, this is going to happen, there's a pretty good chance it's going to happen.
No, I think it's exactly, as soon as the big brands start to embrace it, and as we've seen a few companies trying it, and I think
But with virtual reality, what you're saying that's even further away, really. Or
I think he's saying,
if indeed it even is, because I'm not sure if it might just be a little fad.
I think he's just nervous to see whether brands will embrace it. I think people will use it for campaigns that they do in store or they do physically with people, because they put the headset on and you can, especially holiday companies, you can sort of take each other elsewhere. I think Facebook
movies with there's a great Spider-Man sort of a lot of these experiences that you go in and play a little experience to try and sell a DVD or sell a DVD from 1985.
Get a VHS,
get a video, get a Betamax, sell a Blu-ray, or just a digital version.
Yeah, exactly. But he was saying that Facebook have got they're testing. I can't remember the exact name of the Facebook sort of town thing they're trying to create, where basically you stick the headset on and you can talk to your friends across the world, because you all meet up in this sort of virtual reality world, and you sort of cartoon characters, a bit like
Second Life to me.
It's this by the same guy who made Second Life, bizarrely enough.
It just goes round and round.
It's the same guys in Silicon Valley.
Another crack at doing that. It didn't work, but it was just. When Second Life was massive, it was huge. It was really big. So PlayStation Home was another one that just absolutely didn't succeed.
Didn't work, but you feel like with a company like Facebook.
Yeah.
And the video
they've got their Oculus. Is it Oculus they own, isn't it? So
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're trying to use Oculus certainly, but they're trying to sort of, what Facebook is like. They're trying to. It's quite sort of a bit happy clappy, but it's the idea of friends, in the United States, in Australia, in the UK, in Japan, wherever, all across the world, will be able to meet in this sort of, in the advert, it's a slightly cartoonish little sort of room, sort of like a little bar or something. They all meet around the table and they celebrate someone's birthday all together, because they've got the headset on and it's in a virtual reality world, and you can talk to each other and you can just jump from chat to chat. And it's an interesting idea, and with a company like Facebook behind it, it could be very, very popular. But he was just understandably wasn't going to make any bold predictions, whereas with augmented reality, it's a hell of a lot easier because you've got Pokemon Go, you've got Snapchat, you've got huge companies that are already, you're already using it. You're bound to have interacted with it already. Whereas virtual reality, unless you've stuck a headset on, it's unlikely that you would have interacted with it so much.
So the other thing that you were talking a lot about after the conference was live streaming.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how this is changing, how we should be using this. What did you gather?
So I think the speaker was, started off on an interesting point. Facebook Live has now been around for a while. Still, there's not a huge uptake of people using it regularly. You've got your consistent sort of social media marketers who like to talk about what they're doing, and they will do that through live streaming because they're sort of showing off their sort of skill with it. But beyond sort of experts, specialised people who use video content, not everyone is using it. He was really advertising the fact that you should give it a go. If you're not confident in front of the camera, if you're not someone who enjoys, speaking in public, he said just try and put those fears to one side. The fear is probably a good thing. It helps you focus. It helps you, it shows that you care a lot about what you're doing, and you should try and just use it a little bit and just give it a go, because some of the stats he was giving us, and I have to look at my screen, I'm afraid, but live video, he said 75% more shares than a regular video.
Really?
And we already know that regular video is the most engaging of content you can create. It's more engaging than
That's 75% more
on a regular
shares than a normal video, not just than a normal post, but
exactly.
A video is already good, but this is even better. Okay.
On a normal video, absolutely.
And is that just whilst you're live, or is that on live video after it's been posted?
I think he's taking both in, because I think one of the things he's clear to say is when you are going live, he said make sure you're live for a good amount of time. He said if you're live for 5-10 minutes, you'll get the opening sort of bunch of people who have seen that you're going to go live and will follow you onto it, 10, 15, 20 people, depending on the size of your account. But he said try and be live for a bit longer, because people are constantly logging in, and if they suddenly see that you're live, they'll start watching. So you need to give people a chance to log in and see. And he said, make sure you build up. So a week before, say you're going to go live on this date, day before, an hour before, and then go live. So you give people plenty of notice, especially if you're at a live event or if you're doing something, specific that, is of interest to your audience. Give them lots of notice. I'm sure they will log in. So he said, make sure you give people the opportunity to join you on the video. But I think he was also saying once you promote that video, once that video is now on your profile, it's still of a live nature. It might not be a sort of regular video, but it's still a live themed video. You're still presenting something. Yeah. So the shareability of that is, in his opinion, and from the stats that he's given us, are far more shareable than if you just did a standard piece of video content without a presenter, without a sort of live feel to it. So that was, for me, a huge statistic.
That seems to be, I think that's always been my kind of frustration with people when they do go live on Facebook or any other platforms, really. It's because it seems to be like, we've got this idea, we're going to go live on this thing. So they wait for a thing to start, they hold their camera in their hand, they stick it on Facebook Live, they realise that this is completely unsustainable because nobody can stand there holding their hand like that for any extended length of time. It's all shaky, it's not always, they're not always in the best position. Yeah. And ultimately it lasts for a few minutes, and then the person thinks, they're constantly whizzing it around, let's look at Joe now, and let's look over here, and now let's look over there, and it's like, I just can't watch that. Whereas when it works, and we've done it in the past, it's you set it up on a tripod, you put your camera on there, you make sure you've got a separate battery pack so you can keep your phone's going to keep its battery and whatever else, and then you just let it roll, and you capture whatever happens there and then that day. And we've done little things like using title cards and just holding them in front of the camera to say 5 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, and so on and so forth, so you can build that audience ahead of time and then keep going throughout the whole thing, so you don't, as you say, give people 2 minutes to catch something, and if they didn't catch it, well, go back and watch the thing, because it's not as good when you watch a live video not live.
Exactly.
That's just not as interesting, is it?
It's not as interesting, as I said, unless you're at a very specific sort of cool live event that someone might want to look at again later. It's very rare someone's going to go back to a live video and go, I want to watch whatever it was.
Yeah.
But he said, give it a go, try doing it for at least 10 solid minutes, And he said, don't worry if you're not a natural presenter, just, I think the thing is, make sure you plan. I think people worry that when you go Facebook Live, you kind of sort of decide, I'm going to go live, I'm going to film this, and we'll see how it goes. And no wonder people get scared with it, because they go live and they suddenly realise I'm on camera and I don't really have a plan. But if you're going to walk around somewhere, decide which destinations you're going to go to. You know, we've done it before where we interview people, so you go live and you make sure the people you're going to go talk to are ready as well, because that's always a slightly awkward situation, isn't it? But
just burst into a room with the camera. Hi, I'm here to talk to you,
exactly.
Joe. Joe's like,
remember I emailed you last week, I'm going to come chat to you. You know, I'm here now, but you know, do a little plan. You know, wreck it as well. Do a little run through. And logically, you know, when you do go live, it might not be polished, but that's fine. I don't think people are expecting it to look like, you know, a BBC One production. It's just going to be a nice, simple run through. But as long as you've got a nice, smooth plan, the video itself should be smooth and also interesting. If you are planning it, you won't have, you know, dead space in that video. So he was really just emphasising people just becoming a bit braver. Even with something like a podcast like this, he was sort of giving advice on you know, vocal warm-ups. He made us do a slightly embarrassing vocal warm-up, which was interesting. I think he just said, just embrace the fact that you are going to be on camera, so don't worry about, you know, having to be.
Let's do a vocal warm-up, Joe.
So
like soundless.
I wish I could remember the lyrics to the song, but it was to that William Tell overture. So he made us all stand up.
Okay. We won't stand up.
We won't stand
go
up.
Out of shot, but.
And then he sort of made us sort of do a lip warm up, and he basically like that. So just do that from a high note to a low note, so like that, just to get the lips warmed up and moving. And then we did this William Tell overture to something about ping pong balls. It wasn't rude.
Okay.
But it was by saying ping pong balls and something else. It's that sort of mouth movement that you are warming up.
Okay.
And so William Tell, you sort of you're getting the vocal range as well. So he said if you do that before a podcast, we haven't done, apologies, or do it before a video, you suddenly will find that your voice is a bit more attuned and ready.
Right.
To not sort of, you won't get stuck, you won't sort of find yourself clamming up, or you'll just be a bit ready. You won't have a voice sort of break in the middle of it as well, which could be embarrassing. You know, you'll be ready for it. And he said, you make sure your voice is not just monotoned as well. I hope we haven't been today.
I feel really conscious about making sure that we don't talk in a monotone way.
But I always find it interesting because on the BBC, the radio presenters are always the classic news voice. It's so monotonous.
Not anymore though. And now they went like full the other way and got just like we need to get accents from every corner every corner of the universe.
Overexcited, exactly. But it's showing how what an exciting person I am. But on Radio 4 this morning, you get people who still signing off. And from Radio 4 today, this is the, and it's that classic.
It's just the shipping forecast. I don't know why anyone listens. I mean, it's. Luckily, I am not old enough yet to listen to Radio 4.
You don't find it that interesting, but no, it's just something to have on for me. But it's there are still people who talk in that classic sort of not monotone, but it's a very dull way of speaking, and it's the BBC. Yeah. You'd think they would have developed that, and he was saying that just make sure you have, as you were saying, just a few high notes and a few low notes to keep your voice a little bit more interesting, because if you talk at one tone, it's going to get very boring and people will switch off. And you will sound like you don't really know what you're doing either as well. Yeah. So he had he wasn't just talking about sort of live streaming itself as a content piece. He was talking about how everyone can get involved with it and giving tips and hints. He was a trained singer, obviously hadn't quite gone to plan, but he'd done this live streaming thing and he was very, very successful with it. He's got a few channels now, and he's really just promoting the idea of everyone just giving it a go. He was really, really promoting it, and I think it's something for everyone to consider, I think, because as we said, it's been around for a few years now, but still people aren't really embracing it. But he said the stats you'll get on the back of it could be very useful for your brand or your company.
Well, thank you, Joe. That's been really interesting. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the first part of this conversation, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. It was pretty good as well. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. We'll be back again next time with more gems of wisdom and useful bits and bobs. So until then, see you next time.
See you later.